There comes a moment, maybe late at night when the noise dies down, maybe in the middle of a crowd when you feel like you don't belong, where you start to wonder if all this pretending is worth it. You smile when you're breaking inside. You laugh just loud enough to drown out the doubt. You shrink yourself, edit yourself, water yourself down just to fit into a mold somebody else made for you. And for what? So they'll clap? So they'll like you? Let me tell you something. You were not put here to be liked. You were put here to live. You were put here to breathe deep, to walk bold, to stand tall in your truth, even if your knees shake while you're doing it. This world will try to turn your soul into a mirror for other people's insecurities, but that ain't your job. Your job is to be real, to be raw, to be you, unapologetically, unashamed, and unafraid. Because when you finally stop caring what people think, you give yourself permission to become unstoppable. And that right there is where your power begins. Not when they accept you, but when you accept yourself. You spend so much time trying to fit yourself into boxes that were never built for you. You dress a certain way, talk a certain way, walk a certain way just to make sure nobody looks at you funny. You bite your tongue when you should speak up. You nod your head when your soul wants to scream. And all of it for what? So they'll call you polite? So they'll let you sit at a table that was never meant to feed you in the first place? Let me tell you something straight. You can twist yourself into 1,000 different shapes and someone somewhere will still find a reason not to like you. That's not on you. That's on them. People are walking around with wounds they haven't healed, fears they won't face, and masks they forgot how to take off. And when they see you trying to be real, it threatens them. So they project, they criticize, they mock, but that's not your problem. Your spirit was not designed to be managed by other people's comfort. You were not born to be everyone's favorite. You were born to be free. Stop asking for permission to exist. Just live. You could be a diamond and someone will still swear you're just a piece of glass. You could give your heart, your time, your truth, and they'll still say it's not enough. And if you let that break you, if you let their opinions chain you, you will spend your whole life trying to earn love from people who don't even love themselves. That's the trap. That's the cycle. That's how you lose your voice while trying to be accepted. But here's the truth they don't want to tell you. When you try to please everyone, you betray yourself. You silence your own needs just to make noise for others. You bury your dreams so theirs can live. And what do you get in return? Half-hearted applause? Temporary approval? You're not a puppet. You're not a mannequin in somebody else's story. You're a soul. Your breath and fire and purpose wrapped in skin. The ones who truly matter don't want you to shrink. They want you to soar. And the rest, let them talk. You're not responsible for their comfort. You're responsible for your truth. See, the fear of not being liked runs deep. It's in how we were raised. Be nice. Be agreeable. Don't rock the boat. And before you know it, you're drowning in a sea of yes when everything in you is screaming no. But life is not a popularity contest. It's a journey of becoming. And becoming requires rejection. It requires being misunderstood. It requires standing in a room full of people who don't get you and still refusing to dim your light. That's not arrogance, that's integrity. That's courage. That's choosing your peace over their approval. And the moment you get tired, truly tired of performing, of pretending, of living someone else's version of you, that's when the chains break. That's when your voice gets louder. That's when your back straightens and your spirit says enough. I don't need to be loved by everyone. I just need to love myself enough to stop begging for crumbs. People will ask you to be real, but the second your realness doesn't serve them, they'll call it attitude. They'll label it difficult. They'll twist your strength into something threatening because your confidence exposes their insecurities. But don't you dare fold. Don't you dare shrink to make them feel taller. That's not your job. You're not here to babysit their ego. You're not here to decorate their narrative. You're here to walk your path, speak your truth, and live your purpose, even if it makes the world uncomfortable. Because if you're always adjusting yourself for others, you will never find where you belong. And if they only accept a version of you that makes them feel safe, that's not love, that's control. Break that, break free, let them say what they want, let them misinterpret, misunderstand, misjudge. That's not your weight to carry. You've got dreams to chase. You've got mountains to climb. And you can't do that with the weight of everyone's opinion strapped to your back. You ever notice how people only love you when you're quiet, when you're agreeable, when you don't challenge them? That's not love, that's convenience. And the minute you start saying no, the minute you start setting boundaries, the minute you stop apologizing for who you are, the real ones will stay. And the rest will reveal themselves. And yes, it might hurt. It might break your heart when people walk away. But better to be alone in your truth than surrounded by people who only clap when you're losing yourself. You weren't built to blend in. You weren't built to please. You were built to lead, to love, to live out loud. And the moment you stop giving them that power, the moment you stop asking them to tell you who you are, you'll find a peace that no applause can give you. You'll wake up lighter, breathe deeper, and finally feel what it means to walk in your own skin without shame. You were not born with a stamp on your forehead saying approved by others. That came later, from society, from family, from pain, from fear. And you took that stamp and started living for it. Every move you made, you wondered, will they like this? Will they approve? Will this make them stay? But what if you stopped? What if today you woke up and decided that your validation would come from within, that you'd stop dressing your soul in costumes for the crowd? What would your life look like if you lived it raw, unfiltered, unapologetically real? Yes, some people would walk away, but the ones who stay, they'd see you. They'd love you not in spite of your truth, but because of it. And that's the kind of love worth having. That's the kind of life worth living. Stop auditioning. The role you were born to play doesn't require their permission. Just show up and be you. That's the power. You can spend your whole life chasing the approval of people who wouldn't even clap for you if you were on fire. Or you can decide right now that your peace, your truth, your purpose is worth more than their opinion. You can decide that your self-respect matters more than being liked by people who don't even know your story. You weren't made to dance for their applause. You were made to move to the rhythm of your own soul. The world will keep whispering, be less, be quieter, be nicer. And you've got to have the courage to whisper back, no, I'll be more. I'll be louder. I'll be real. Because once you stop caring what they think, you start caring about what matters, your calling, your growth, your healing. And that's when you become dangerous. That's when nothing and no one can stop you, not because they like you, but because you finally like yourself. And when you like yourself, you stop looking for love in all the wrong places. You stop chasing people, you start chasing destiny. You know what's wild? We spend years, sometimes our whole lives, measuring ourselves through someone else's eyes. Like our worth is something external, something floating out there waiting to be handed to us if we just act right, look right, talk right. But who made them the judge? Who told you that their opinion was gospel? Let me tell you something real. You were born worthy. Before you ever earned $1, before you ever proved a thing, before anybody clapped for you or criticized you, your worth was already written in stone. It doesn't rise and fall with someone's mood. It doesn't change because they misunderstood you or didn't see your value. Their opinion is just that, an opinion, not truth, not fact. And it definitely ain't a verdict on your soul. See, if you keep letting other people hold the measuring tape to your life, you'll always come up short. Not because you're not enough, but because they're measuring you by their own limits, their own wounds, their own lack of vision. Stop giving them the pen to write your story. You've got to take that back. Because nobody can define your value unless you let them. Think about how many times you've held back, not because you didn't believe in yourself, but because you were scared of what they might say. You know who I'm talking about. The invisible crowd in your mind, that chorus of voices, some real, some imagined, judging your every step, every word, every dream. They say it's too much, too bold, too different. And so you shrink, you dim, you tuck parts of yourself away just to avoid the noise. But here's the thing, those opinions, they're not about you. Most of the time, people don't see you as you are, they see you as they are, through filters of jealousy, fear, insecurity, or ignorance. And if you internalize that, if you start seeing yourself through their cracked lens, you'll lose sight of your own reflection. That's the danger. You'll start to believe their noise over your own voice. And once that happens, your spirit starts to fade. Not because it's weak, but because it's been caged too long. And baby, you were never meant for cages. You were meant to fly. We live in a world that teaches us early how to seek approval, from grades to likes, from followers to feedback. It's a cycle of chasing validation that never ends. But here's the truth they don't teach you in school. No amount of outside approval can heal the inside void of self-doubt. You could be doing everything right, smiling on cue, working overtime, being everything for everyone, and still feel empty. You know why? Because you can't feed your soul with applause. It doesn't work like that. That's not nourishment. That's noise. And when the noise fades, you're still left with yourself. So the question is, who are you when nobody's clapping? Who are you when the spotlight's off and the room is silent? If your worth is built on the opinions of others, it will crumble the moment those opinions shift. And trust me, they will. People are fickle. One day you're a hero, the next you're a villain. One day they praise you, the next they ghost you. That's why you've got to build your worth like a foundation, solid, deep, unshakable. Not on them, on you. You ever notice how some people only support you when you're struggling, but disappear when you start shining? That's because your growth threatens their comfort. Your courage calls out their complacency, and instead of rising with you, they'd rather drag you down with opinions masked as advice. You're changing. Don't get too ahead of yourself. Who do you think you are? That one right there. Who do you think you are? That's not a question. That's a challenge. That's someone trying to pull you back into the box they put you in. But you don't owe them your smallness. You don't owe them your silence, your apology, your dimmed light. The moment you start rising, you will attract opinions like flies. Everybody's got something to say when you finally decide to be more than what they expected. But just because they speak doesn't mean you have to listen. And just because they judge doesn't mean they're right. Let them talk, let them whisper, let them project. Your worth isn't up for debate. It never was. There's something powerful that happens when you stop seeking permission to be yourself. The noise starts to quiet. The fear starts to fade. And your inner voice, the one you've been drowning out for years, gets louder. That voice doesn't speak in doubt, it speaks in knowing. It doesn't beg for approval, it moves in truth. That voice knows who you are. It remembers your resilience. It honors your pain and your power, but it's been buried under all the what will they think for too long. So dig it up, let it rise, let it roar. Because you don't need their stamp of approval to become who you were always meant to be. You don't need a round of applause to walk in purpose. You don't need their compliments to feel complete. That's not ego, that's alignment. That's peace. And peace, my friend, is more valuable than praise. Praise is fleeting, peace is forever, and once you find it, once you realize that you never needed their opinion to be enough, you become unstoppable. They'll say you've changed, and they'll be right. Because growth is change, healing is change, choosing yourself is change. And you're allowed to change. You're allowed to outgrow people's comfort zones. You're allowed to evolve past the version of you they were comfortable with. That doesn't make you fake, that makes you free. And freedom is a threat to people who are still caged by their own self-doubt, so they lash out. They label you, they talk, but listen, you don't have to carry the weight of their misunderstanding. That's not your load. Your job is not to convince them of your worth. Your job is to live it, to embody it, to show up every day with the kind of quiet strength that doesn't ask for approval but commands respect, not because you demand it, but because you walk like you know who you are. And when you know who you are, their opinions lose power. They might still talk, but it won't stick. It won't shake you. Because you'll be grounded in something real, your truth. Every time you let someone's opinion make you second guess your value, you hand them a piece of your power, piece by piece, decision by decision. You start living a life that's shaped more by fear than freedom. And before you know it, you're not even living, you're performing. But life's not a stage, and you weren't put here to play a part that makes everyone else comfortable. You were put here to be real. And being real isn't always pretty, it's not always popular, but it's always powerful. Because when you finally stop chasing their approval, you start creating your own peace. When you stop shrinking to fit their expectations, you start expanding into your full potential, and that's when life begins. Not the life they want for you, but the one that's been waiting for you to claim it. And let me tell you something. You are worth it. You've always been worth it. Not because of what they say, but because of who you are. And the moment you believe that, the moment you truly feel it, you'll never need their opinion to feel whole again. Fear of judgment is one of the most invisible prisons we live in. You don't see the bars, but you feel them. You feel them when you want to speak up, but something inside makes you go silent. You feel them when you want to try something new, take that risk, step into your calling, but then you freeze. Not because you don't believe in yourself, but because you're already hearing the voices in your head, already imagining the laughs, the stares, the whisper. That fear of what they'll say, it keeps you on a leash, a short one. Every step you want to take forward, it jerks you back. You start measuring your every move through the lens of somebody else's comfort. And what does it cost you? Your authenticity, your freedom, your peace. You start living not as yourself, but as a version of you that feels safe enough not to trigger judgment. But let me tell you something real. Safe isn't free. And let me tell you something real. Safe isn't free. Safe is quiet desperation. Safe is dying with your potential still locked inside you. And at some point, you've got to ask, is their opinion really worth the cost of my soul? You weren't born afraid. You didn't come into this world scared to be seen, scared to be heard. That fear was learned. It was picked up from moments where you were laughed at for being different, shut down for being bold, criticized for simply being real. So you started building walls. You started editing yourself. And before long, you became a version of yourself that made other people comfortable but made you miserable. That's what fear of judgment does. It convinces you to trade your fire for approval. And the worst part is, no matter how much you twist and turn yourself to fit their mold, someone will always have something to say. You could be quiet, they'll call you weak. Speak up, and now you're too much. Dress modest, you're boring. Dress bold, you're seeking attention. There's no winning that game. So why keep playing? Why keep shrinking for people who wouldn't even clap for your courage if they saw the full you? Fear of judgment is a thief. It robs you of the right to live loud, live proud, live true. And that robbery, it stops when you say enough. You know what fear of judgment really is? It's the mind tricking you into thinking your survival depends on someone else's approval. It's ancient wiring. Back when being part of the tribe meant staying alive. So we learned to blend in, to follow the pack, to fear standing out. But that fear, that instinct, doesn't serve you anymore. This is a new world. And in this world, the ones who rise, the ones who lead, the ones who shift the atmosphere, they're the ones who dare to stand out, not fit in. But your brain still clings to that old fear, that false alarm that says, if they don't like me, I'm not safe. And that lie keeps you small. It makes you second guess your ideas. It makes you delay your dreams. It makes you ask permission when you should be walking in purpose. You become so scared of judgment that you forget what it means to be bold. But listen, your survival no longer depends on being accepted by everyone. Your growth depends on you breaking that fear, walking through it, talking through it, living out loud, even if your voice shakes. That's where your power is. Fear of judgment doesn't just hold you back. It makes you lie to yourself. You start convincing yourself you don't want that dream anymore just because you're scared of what people will say if you chase it. You start settling for less, claiming it's enough, when deep down you're starving for more. You dim your passion, your creativity, your truth, just to blend in with a crowd that wouldn't even notice if you disappeared. And slowly, without realizing it, you lose the connection to your own soul. You're still alive, but you're not living. You're surviving behind a mask, afraid of what they'll say if you ever take it off. But real joy, real purpose, real fulfillment, it lives on the other side of that fear. It lives in your raw, unfiltered self. The one who laughs too loud, dreams too big, speaks too boldly. The one who doesn't apologize for taking up space. And I know breaking free from that fear ain't easy, but neither is living with it. Neither is dying a little more each day just to stay small enough not to be seen. So you've got a choice. Stay caged by opinions, or finally set yourself free. I get it. It hurts to be judged. It hurts to be misunderstood, mischaracterized, labeled. We're human. We want connection. We want to be accepted. And that's not weakness. That's part of our nature. But the problem comes when we confuse acceptance with permission. You don't need their green light to be who you are. You don't need their understanding to stand in your truth. You've got to stop handing out permission slips to people who've never lived a single day in your shoes. They haven't cried your tears, fought your battles, healed your wounds. So how can their judgment ever define your worth? It can't. It shouldn't. Yet we let it. And that's the chain, that's the trap. You become so fixated on being understood that you start abandoning yourself. But you weren't built to be understood by everyone. You were built to be whole. And being whole means standing strong even when the crowd doesn't clap. Even when they don't get it. Especially then. Because it's easy to be bold when you're praised. But it's powerful to be bold when you're judged. And still keep going. Fear of judgment turns dreams into secrets. You ever been there? You've got this fire inside you, this idea, this gift, but instead of shouting it out loud, you keep it locked away. Why? Because you're scared they'll laugh, scared they'll question your ability, scared they'll say, who do you think you are? So you bury it, you put it off. You tell yourself one day, but one day becomes someday, and someday becomes never. All because of what? Fear. Fear of words, fear of looks, fear of rejection. But the truth is, rejection is a part of the road. So is doubt. So is criticism. There's not a single great person who didn't walk through that fire. The difference is they kept going. They didn't let fear make their decisions. And that's what you've got to do. You've got to act anyway, dream anyway, speak anyway, even if your voice cracks, even if they judge you, because they will. But when you stop letting their judgment determine your direction, you'll feel something you haven't felt in a long time. Freedom. And freedom is worth every stare, every whisper, every, you'll never make it. Most people don't realize how much of their life they've given away to fear. How many years they've spent walking on eggshells, adjusting their light to avoid being too much. How many opportunities they've missed because the thought of being judged outweighed the hope of being seen. But judgment is inevitable. Whether you succeed or fail, they'll talk. Whether you stand up or stay silent, they'll talk. Whether you stand up or stay silent, they'll talk. That's human nature. So if judgment is going to come either way, why not be judged while doing something meaningful? Why not be judged for chasing your dream instead of hiding from it? Why not be judged for being your whole, real, beautiful self? You don't owe this world perfection. You owe it truth. And truth doesn't come dressed in approval. It comes raw. It comes honest. And yes, it comes with judgment. But that judgment, it doesn't have to own you. It doesn't have to guide you. Because you are more than someone else's opinion. You are a storm. You are fire. You are purpose in motion. And when you finally stop living for their comfort and start living for your calling, that fear becomes fuel. And you finally become free. You ever notice how people chase praise like it's oxygen? Like if no one's clapping, no one's watching, then what they're doing must not matter. That kind of mindset will exhaust you. It'll trap you in a cycle where you're constantly looking outward to feel something inward. But here's the truth. Real confidence, the kind that doesn't shake when the crowd walks away, doesn't come from praise. It comes from purpose. It comes from knowing deep in your bones why you do what you do, even when no one's paying attention. See, praise is a performance drug. It'll hype you up, make you feel like a star for a minute. But when the applause dies, what are you left with? Purpose doesn't need an audience. Purpose doesn't need a round of applause. It just needs you to show up every day with intention, with heart, with focus, because purpose fills you in a way praise never can. Praise is conditional. It depends on other people's moods, their preferences, their approval. But purpose, that's between you and God, between you and your calling. And when you walk in that, when you live for that, no praise can make you and no silence can break you. The problem is we're trained from a young age to believe that praise equals worth. Get the gold star, get the compliment, get the promotion. And if you don't, then something must be wrong with you. That's the lie. That's the trap. So we grow up chasing validation like it's the goal instead of the byproduct. But let me tell you, validation without foundation is a setup for collapse. Because the minute someone doesn't like what you do or how you do it, your whole identity starts to tremble. That's what happens when your confidence is built on praise. It becomes fragile. It becomes dependent. But when your confidence is rooted in purpose, you can be told no 100 times and still keep going. Because purpose is your why. It's your anchor. It's the voice inside that says, this matters, even when the world is silent. That's where your confidence should grow from. Not the likes, not the followers, not the compliments, but the conviction that you were made for something, and whether they see it or not, you see it. And you're not quitting. True confidence isn't loud. It doesn't need to walk into a room shouting, look at me. It walks in quiet but heavy with presence. It doesn't need to prove. It doesn't need to compete. Because when you're anchored in purpose, you're not moved by comparison. You're not rattled by someone else's success. You're not thrown off by the highs and lows. You move steady. You move with clarity. Confidence born from purpose gives you direction. It gives you peace. Because you're not waiting for someone else to hand you your worth. You already know who you are and why you're here. So when people praise you, great. When they don't, you're still good. Because you're not doing it for claps. You're doing it because it's in your spirit. It's in your DNA. And that kind of confidence, that's rare. That's magnetic. That's the kind of energy that draws people in without you trying. Because people can feel when you're operating from purpose. It's different, it's real, it's grounded, and no storm, no shade, no silence can take it from you. There's a difference between performing for praise and living with purpose. One drains you, the other fuels you. When you're performing, every move is calculated. You're constantly checking, did they like it? Did they notice? Did I get it right? That's a heavy way to live. It's exhausting, and no matter how much praise you collect, it's never enough. Because your soul is starving for something deeper, something authentic. That's why people with everything on the outside can still feel empty. Because praise doesn't satisfy a purpose-starved life. But when you move from purpose, everything shifts. Your actions aren't about attention, they're about impact. You're not just doing what looks good, you're doing what feels right. And that feels powerful. That feels liberating. You wake up with a reason. You go to bed knowing you honored something bigger than applause. And over time, you build this quiet, unshakable confidence. Not loud, not showy, just solid. Because you're not dependent on people to remind you of your worth. You're living it every day. Through your purpose, through your choices, through your presence. You ever meet someone who's not the loudest in the room, not the flashiest, but they've got this energy that's undeniable? That's purpose-born confidence. It's different from ego. Ego screams, purpose whispers. Ego needs to be seen, purpose just needs to be fulfilled. And that kind of confidence can't be faked, it can't be borrowed, it's built, it's earned. It's forged in the fire of rejection, doubt, silence, and still choosing to keep going. It's not built in the moments when people are cheering you on, it's built when they're not. When you keep showing up, keep working, keep giving your all, even when nobody's watching. That's where it grows. And that kind of confidence becomes your armor. Not because you're untouchable, but because you're aligned. You know what you're doing and why. So judgment doesn't derail you. Criticism doesn't destroy you. You're rooted. And that root system, that's purpose. That's the deeper why that keeps you steady when life tries to shake you. That's the kind of confidence the world can't take, because the world didn't give it to you. We live in a world that glamorizes praise and overlooks purpose. We see highlight reels and think that's where confidence comes from. But you don't build confidence on a stage. You build it in silence, in early mornings, in late nights, in the private decisions you make to keep moving forward even when no one claps. That's the truth nobody tells you. Praise is addictive, but it's also unpredictable. One day they love you, the next they don't. And if your sense of self rises and falls with that, you'll never know peace. But when your purpose drives you, you rise anyway. You rise on bad days. You rise when you're tired. You rise when the noise is gone. Because purpose gives you something praise never will: consistency. It gives you something to come back to when the world gets noisy or when your path gets lonely. And that's when you realize you're not doing it for them. You're doing it because something inside you won't let you quit. That fire, that hunger, that reason. That's where true confidence is born. not outside, but within. So the next time you find yourself chasing approval, stop, breathe, ask yourself, am I doing this to be praised, or am I doing this because it's part of my purpose? That question will shift everything. Freedom starts when you stop asking for validation and start choosing what's true to your soul. Your rules might look different. Your path might be messy, unpredictable, bold. And that's exactly why it's powerful, because it's yours. Every time you silence your instincts to please others, you chip away at your spirit. But every time you trust your gut, even when it's risky, you reclaim a little more of who you really are. And the truth is, the people who change the world, the people who inspire others, the people who live deeply and fully, they don't follow the script. They make their own. So what are you waiting for? Rip the page, break the pattern, rewrite the rules, because the life you want is waiting on the other side of permission you no longer need. Do you ever feel like you're stuck in a chapter that doesn't even sound like your voice? Like you're going through the motions, saying the right things, doing what's expected, but deep down you're screaming for more? That's the cost of living someone else's story. That's the ache of unspoken dreams, of creativity suffocated by conformity. But hear me, just because that's the chapter you've been living doesn't mean that's how the story ends. You've got the pen, you've always had it, and at any moment you can start writing something new. That takes courage. Yeah? It takes letting go of what's familiar. It takes disappointing people who thought they knew who you were. But that's the price of freedom. That's the cost of authenticity. And you're worth it. You're not here to impress the world. You're here to express your soul. And your soul wasn't made to fit inside lines. It didn't draw. So go ahead. Start that business. Walk away from what's safe. Say what you've been holding in. Your next chapter doesn't need approval. It needs your truth. It needs your voice. And once you write from that place, your story becomes unforgettable, not because it followed the rules. So many people waste years waiting for a sign, waiting for the perfect moment, waiting for someone to tell them it's okay to live their truth. But what they don't realize is that the permission they're waiting for will never come. Not the way they want it to, because no one else knows the fire that burns in you. No one else knows what you're capable of. That's between you and God, between you and your calling. And every second you spend waiting is a second you could be building, growing, creating, living. Life isn't about playing it safe. It's about showing up raw, real, and relentless. There will always be voices telling you to slow down, to shrink, to settle. Ignore them. They're just echoes of fear dressed as wisdom. The truth is, the story you're here to write can't be written by anyone else. They don't have your heart. They don't carry your scars. They didn't fight your battles. So stop trying to make your journey make sense to people who were never meant to walk it. Take the pen, flip the page, own your voice. Because the moment you do, your life stops being a script and becomes a revolution. You know what's powerful? Choosing yourself. Not because someone hyped you up, not because the stars aligned, but because deep down, you know your story matters. Even when nobody's listening, even when no one claps. That kind of self-belief is rare, it's raw, and it's real. Choosing yourself means betting on your vision when others bet against it. It means showing up with shaky hands and steady purpose. It means turning I wish into I will. People might not get it. They might call you crazy. They might laugh. Let them. Because while they're watching, you're building. While they're doubting, you're becoming. And one day they'll look up and realize that the person they tried to box in created something bold and beautiful by following no one's rules but their own. That's the power of authorship. That's the magic of agency. Your life doesn't have to look like theirs to be worthy. It doesn't have to follow the timeline, the tradition, the trend. It just has to be true to you. So keep turning pages. Keep rewriting endings. Keep breaking molds. Because when you lead your life from the inside out, there's no limit to how high you can rise. People will project their fears onto you like it's wisdom. They'll tell you to play small, be cautious, follow the plan, because that's all they know. But that's not your truth. Their fears are not your future. Their limits are not your ceiling. You've got something inside of you that wasn't built to sit still. It wasn't built to be polite. It was built to move mountains. And the only way you'll ever access that power is by living on your own terms. That doesn't mean it'll be easy. It means it'll be worth it. There will be days you question yourself, days you want to go back to the comfort of a scripted life. But then you will remember why you started. You'll remember the fire, the hunger, the need to live a life that's not just safe, but significant. And that's the fuel. That's the reason. You are made to be different. So stop apologizing for it. Start embracing it. Start creating from that place. And don't wait for someone to hand you a blueprint. You are the blueprint. You are the author. So write like your life depends on it. Because in a way, it does. If there's one truth you carry from this moment on, let it be this. Your life is your masterpiece. And masterpieces are never born from imitation. They're born from courage, from soul, from vision. The world will try to edit your story to make it more comfortable, more digestible, more familiar. Don't let them. Don't let anyone shrink your magic to fit their mold. You owe it to yourself to create a life so true, so vivid, so full of fire that people feel it when you walk into a room. Not because you followed the rules, but because you broke them in the name of something bigger, your truth. This world doesn't need more people playing it safe. It needs people who are brave enough to be original, brave enough to chase joy instead of approval, brave enough to say, this is my life, and I will write every line, every chapter, every ending with intention. That kind of life, that's legacy. That's power. That's freedom. And it's yours if you're bold enough to pick up the pen and write without apology. Because the story only becomes legendary when it's lived. With everything you've got. You've heard the words. You've felt the fire. Now it's time to carry it with you. Everything we've talked about. Letting go of judgment, ignoring the noise of other people's opinions, breaking the chains of fear, choosing authenticity over approval, living from purpose instead of praise, and owning your life like the one-of-a-kind masterpiece it is. It all leads back to one simple, unshakable truth. You were never meant to live in someone else's shoes. You were never meant to shrink to fit into a world too afraid to see real greatness. You were born to rise, to speak, to shine, and to walk boldly in your own truth, even when it feels like you're walking alone, because the moment you decide to stop caring what people think is the moment you begin to discover who you really are. That's when the layers fall off. That's when the mask drops. That's when your power begins to speak louder than any outside voice ever could. Understand this. Your value does not fluctuate with applause. Your direction is not determined by critics. Your light isn't dependent on someone else's comfort. You're here to shake the ground, not tiptoe through life hoping to be accepted. Confidence doesn't come from being liked. It comes from knowing your purpose, from standing in it when the room gets quiet, from moving forward when the world expects you to fold. When you walk in purpose, you don't need permission. When you live in truth, you don't need validation. When you love yourself enough to write your own story, you free others to do the same. That's the ripple, that's the impact, that's how change begins. You don't need to be perfect to be powerful. You don't need to be popular to be unforgettable. You just need to be real, raw, grounded. You, because your story, flaws and all, is the very thing that can break chains for someone else. So write it, speak it, live it. Stop watering yourself down to keep others comfortable. Stop holding back to keep peace that comes at the cost of your own soul. You weren't made to blend in. You were made to lead, to inspire, to live boldly and unapologetically. And now you've got the fuel, you've got the reminder, you've got the truth inside you burning louder than the lies around you. So walk tall, speak boldly, love deeply, and live like the author of your own legacy, because that's who you are. That's who you've always been. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for listening with an open heart. Keep rising, keep fighting, keep becoming. May your story be loud, real, and unstoppable. God bless you. Stay true, stay strong, and never let this world write your ending.
Not following us, you will probably never hear my voice again. But if you are, congratulations. Drop 100. If you read this far, this shows that you are the part of 0.01% who actually finished what they start. If you are serious about changing life, then make sure to join our movements by living as a follow.